If you're tuned in this week, props to you. Because I don't know if I'd want to hear anything about Saturday night in Madison, Wisconsin. We'll get to it. We're going to talk about more than just Wisconsin here today. We're going to also preview the Northwestern game. It's a rivalry game. Of course, it's rivalry weekend coming up this weekend. The game, the Iron Bowl. We're going to talk some championship game scenarios. I think I have them all right. Again, you can read like 5 different articles and get 4 different answers, so it's still hard to know 100% that you're right, but I think I have all of them right. We're going to make some game picks as well. Let's talk about it. 27-10, Illinois goes on the road and loses to Wisconsin. Just so bad everywhere. Nothing was good. Nothing was good from Illinois. Luke Altmaier was hit a lot. He was sacked 5 times. They didn't run the ball at all. Could not run the ball at all. And this is why last week I talked about putting some brake lights on the last couple of weeks in the running game, because it didn't feel real, at least to me, because Luke Altmaier was such a big part of these last couple of rushing performances, and I still didn't feel like the backs really got all that much outside of when the game was really out of hand the last 2 weeks in the second half. And you come into this game, and Wisconsin shuts you down. Altmaier only got to 20 yards rushing, and the rest of the team had 30. 1.7 yards per carry. They couldn't run the ball, and like I said, Altmaier was hit a lot. The Wisconsin secondary, to their credit, really covered guys. And when they tried to throw, there were a couple of coverage sacks and really nothing going for the offense at all in this game against Wisconsin. So they can't run the ball. On the other side of the ball, couldn't stop the run. It's not a good recipe for success if you can't run the ball and you can't stop it. And that's what Wisconsin was able to do. On the flip side, 209 yards, 4.8 a pop, only had 2 20-plus yard rushes, so they were just gashing them every single play. They had the 84-yard touchdown run, which really was a backbreaker. Illinois was still in that game and fighting. I think it was 17-10 at that point, and Wisconsin breaks off an 84-yard touchdown run. Just not good. Darion Dupree was the one that broke that, by the way. Sometimes in these games, it's when you lose to a team that you are clearly more talented than, it's as simple as you just didn't show up. And Illinois just didn't show up. And there's a lot of different factors for why that may be. We talked about a few of them last week. You know, it was a return game for Brett Bielema and Aaron Henry and a couple of other guys on that staff, a couple of Illinois players. Do I think that played a huge role in the game? Not really. I don't think that's the reason they lost. But it was a Wisconsin team that the last couple of weeks had shown some fight against really good teams, but they just couldn't continue it throughout the game. It was just the first half. Well, Saturday night in Madison, in Camp Randall, they continued through the whole game. Illinois couldn't get anything offensively, and then when Wisconsin needed to go run for a first down, they could. That's why Illinois couldn't win this game, because Wisconsin just dominated the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Here's Brett Bielema after the game talking about what went wrong, what they're moving forward to.
We definitely didn't run the ball effectively, and that was probably, for me, the frustrating part. We tried to get the ball inside. Obviously, then we went to the perimeter. Nothing happened. It's just kind of a summation of a lot of really bad football. There's going to be obviously out of season and off season corrections and adjustments, but for us to get Northwestern, it's going to be that defense staff, the same one that put together good game plans the last couple of weeks, got to do their best effort to get ready for Northwestern.
All right, one more game to go for Illinois. They're 7-4. They've got that Northwestern game Saturday after Thanksgiving this week. I do want to point out one thing that the TV broadcast had from Saturday night. Wisconsin, it was their first time scoring in all 4 quarters since September of last year, of 2024. That's like 18 games. So nothing good. We'll talk about this Northwestern game here coming up later on in the show, but they got one more chance to finish out the season strong. We're going to talk about other games across the country last weekend. We're going to do them a little bit quicker than normal because we have so much to get to this upcoming week. USC at Oregon. Oregon wins it 42-27. USC is essentially eliminated from the playoff conversation with this loss. They still had an outside shot at the Big Ten title, too, heading into this game, but they're done with that now. More of the same from USC, just can't quite break through under Lincoln Riley. I'm sure it's very frustrating for him, that staff, fans of USC, but Oregon looked really good. They started really hot in this game, and they got Jaden Mayava to turn it over twice, and then they stuffed the USC run game, 28 carries for 52 yards. That's 1.9 yards per carry. Not good enough for USC. And then Dante Moore, he was steady again. He's been steady really all year long outside of the one loss to Indiana. That's the only game really where he didn't play all that well. He was 22 of 30 for 257. And DeCorian Moore was great again. Noah Whittington out of the backfield for the Ducks. Really good game. 19 carries, 104 yards, and a touchdown. That's over 5.5 yards per carry. Really impressive showing from Oregon. And they stay alive, obviously, in the college football playoff picture, but even in the Big Ten championship game picture. Again, we'll get to those later on in the show. Pitt went down to Georgia Tech and took it to the Yellow Jackets, 42-28. Georgia Tech controlled their destiny in the ACC heading into this game, and Pitt just took it to them. They punched them right in the mouth. It was 28-0 like that before you could even blink. Georgia Tech fought back, to their credit, but it was too big of a hole to climb out of. Really, what a performance from Pitt's running back, Jakirian Turner. We profiled Desmond Reed last week because he was a Pitt All-American running back last year, or All-American caliber, and we said we need to find a way to get him going. Well, Reed ended up not even playing because he got banged up in Notre Dame's game and couldn't really get anything going in the week of practice, so he didn't even play, but Turner goes for 201 yards on just 21 carries, almost 10 yards a carry. Outstanding performance from him. He broke a couple long ones, and then Haynes King just couldn't pull it off again for Georgia Tech. He had good counting stats, but he threw 2 picks, including a 100-yard pick 6 when I believe the score was 28-14 in the second half, and Georgia Tech was at the goal line, ready to score, and he throws a pick 6, and it's 35-14 instead of 28-21, with Georgia Tech having all the momentum, scoring 3 straight touchdowns. Just too big of a hole for Georgia Tech to climb out of, especially when you're going to throw a 100-yard pick 6. Tech now needs a ton of help to get into the ACC championship game. When they came into this game having control of their own destiny, now they don't. They need a lot of help. All right, this weekend, so many great games, so many important games for the landscape. This is our season record, 27-16 straight up against the spread, 500 strikes again, 22-24. We just can't break through there. The game, Ohio State and Michigan. Look, nothing's different than the last really 5 years in this game. On paper, everything points to Ohio State. Everything. Everything points to them. How many points can Michigan score in this game? That's the question. And a couple of times the last 4 years, they haven't had to score many to win. But it's a tall task this year against this Ohio State defense. They've held every single opponent that they've played to less than 17 points. This might be the best defense of this century, maybe. Look, I mean, you can see the rankings in the country. Just an outstanding defense. You get nothing on them. Now, I say the best defense of this century, probably 2001 Miami's better, but you get the point. This defense gives you absolutely no chance. And, you know, we saw it when Illinois played them. The Illinois offense couldn't couldn't muster much, and they scored the most points that Ohio State's given up, which is 16 this year. The Ohio State offense can kill you too, so it's not like it's much easier on the other side of the ball. Michigan, they also don't blow you away on offense. So it's a tough matchup there. At least if Michigan was high-flying on offense, to say, hey, that can give us a chance against this Ohio State defense. But they're very limited in the pass game with Bryce Underwood. You know, he really has no one worthy of throwing to in the pass game. And Justice Haynes, their best running back, is likely not going to play in this game. Sharon Moore said last week he's not going to say he's out for the year, but he's likely done for the regular season. So he's probably not going to play in this game. It's a tough matchup for Michigan. But it's been a tough matchup the last 5 years, and they've won all those games too. For the prediction, look, I don't have the guts to pick Michigan again. I don't know how they win this game because Ohio State is so solid. But again, you would have said that the last 4 years too. So there's obviously worlds where Michigan wins this game. And if they do win this game, they're at home. Will I be shocked? No, because Michigan owns Ryan Day and Ohio State right now. Spread's 11.5. Ohio State's on the road. I'm not going to take them to cover that number. I think Michigan can muddy the game up enough to keep that close, but I'll pick Ohio State to win. Again, everything points to Ohio State in this game, but that is why God makes you play the games on grass and not on paper. Alabama and Auburn, the Iron Bowl. This is always such a fun game, especially when it's at Jordan-Hare Stadium at Auburn. So I think Alabama has to be really careful in this game. How does Auburn win this game? That's the question, because they're 5-6. They're trying to get to be bowl eligible, and they have to make it ugly. They have to. That's just what they're going to have to do. They have to make it ugly. Auburn does stop the run, which Alabama doesn't care if they stop the run. Alabama doesn't run the ball anyway, and they're a little bit leaky in the secondary. So in that aspect of the matchup, it doesn't bode well for Auburn because Alabama's not going to try to run the ball if they can't run it early because they haven't been able to run it all year. So they've been there before, so they're not afraid to go straight to the pass. And the reason they're not afraid to go straight to the pass is because Ty Simpson's been so good all year. Ty Simpson is just so steady, doesn't turn it over, really efficient. And there's wide receiver question marks at Alabama, which you're not used to saying. Ryan Williams has not looked good all year. I know he's been banged up, but just has not been the guy that everyone, including myself, expected him to be coming into this year. But Alabama can throw to win. That's the only way they've been able to win this year is throwing the football. For Auburn, true freshman Deuce Knight is going to start at quarterback for the Tigers. Second career start. He started on Saturday against the FCS team. So obviously big spot for him to come into this one. But hey, man, this game gets weird in Jordan-Hare Stadium, especially at night. It's just one of those things where you always expect it to be close, and guess what? Vegas agrees. It's only a 5.5-point spread. I think Bama's going to win and cover because I just think they're better. But, like I said, it gets really dicey against Auburn on the road, especially when Alabama needs to win this game. If they get a third loss, I'm not sure I'm not even close to sure that they're going to make the playoff, and they're out of the SEC title game picture. So this is a must-win for Alabama, and we'd really like to have it for Auburn to get to bowl eligibility. They already fired their coach. Obviously, they want to beat Alabama every single year. The line's only 5.5 for a reason, because I expect this game to be close, and if Auburn can make it ugly enough, they'll have a shot there in the fourth quarter. Battle in the state of Tennessee. Vandy on the road at Tennessee. This might be winning in to the college football playoff for Vanderbilt. It might be. I think this is going to be a really fun game. Fun quarterback matchup, too. Diego Pavia for Vanderbilt and Joey Aguilar for Tennessee. Joey Aguilar came in late. We all know the story of Nico leaving Tennessee. He's been as good as you could have possibly expected him to be for Tennessee to this point in the season. And Diego Pavia is the do-it-all guy for Vanderbilt. And he's going to have to do it all again. I lean defense in this matchup for Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia, I do want to say again, as I've said a couple of times this year talking about Vanderbilt, he's got some WTF plays in him. It's always in him. Whether they're good or bad, we don't know until they show up. But it's always a possibility. Like I said, Vandy might be winning in. Vandy's looking for their first win in Knoxville since 2017. Obviously, they play this game every single year. The Vols have won the last 6 overall. So it's a tough game for Vanderbilt just being on the road and against their in-state rival that they really never beat. But I think Vandy has one more punch in them. I think they have one more punch in them. Tennessee's favored by 3.5 points. I think Vandy's going to win outright. I think they're going to win outright, and I think you're going to have to get comfortable with Vanderbilt being in the college football playoff. At least for one game. They'll probably be on the road if they win this game. Again, I lean Vanderbilt on the defensive side of the ball, too. Tennessee, they give up a lot on defense, especially through the air. And Vanderbilt has been pretty steady defensively all year long. So I'll take Vandy to win that in-state matchup, take down the Vols, and maybe go to the playoff. All right, we've got a bunch of other games that we can't possibly talk about all of them in depth. These are some more games this weekend that you need to be aware of. And we have a great slate on Friday. It starts with the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss. Is Lane Kiffin going to be coaching there after the Egg Bowl? We don't know. The athletic director put out a weird statement last week that I could see the argument for either side of whether he's staying or leaving. Really weird situation for Ole Miss. Are they going to be locked in? Mississippi State, they're not as bad as certainly previous years, and it's on the road. And Mississippi State has beaten good Ole Miss teams recently in Egg Bowls. Georgia Tech, this was a much more fun game when Georgia Tech only had one loss. I think even if they beat Georgia, they're probably not going to get into the playoff because they were already at like 16 with just one loss, and now they lost to Pitt. But Georgia Tech almost beat Georgia in Athens last year. This game's being played in Atlanta at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which I get it. Georgia Tech got a check for moving the game there. I wish it was on campus. It should be on campus. They have to go to Georgia, but Georgia gets to go play in a stadium that they play in all the time, and it's going to be probably 70% Georgia fans. I hate it. Put games on campus. A&M and Texas. Texas up and down all year. Who knows? A&M, they're winning into the SEC championship game in that game. And then on Saturday, Oregon, they have to keep winning. They're not a sure lock with 2 losses. And then Miami and Pitt will go a long way in deciding the ACC championship race. Let's talk about those championship game scenarios because they're very convoluted. There's a lot to be aware of. This is for the Big Ten. Ohio State and Indiana are winning in. That's the easiest one. Oregon can get there if they beat Washington and Ohio State loses. Michigan needs to beat Ohio State and for Oregon to lose to Washington, and then they would go to Indianapolis. Big Ten is pretty straightforward. Let's look at the SEC. Texas A&M beat Texas, they're in. Alabama beat Auburn, they're in. There would be a tie with Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss, but Alabama wins the SEC tiebreaker, I think, which is conference opponent record, something like that. Georgia needs Alabama to lose or for Texas A&M to lose. Ole Miss needs to win their game. A&M needs to lose and Alabama needs to lose. So Ole Miss a big long shot there, but Georgia in play if Alabama or A&M loses their respective games. Big 12, Pretty simple, too. Texas Tech beat West Virginia, you're in. BYU beat UCF, you're in. Arizona State is still alive. They need to beat Arizona for Texas Tech to lose and for BYU to win. They would go against BYU in that situation. And then the ACC, this one is still the craziest one. This one's the hardest to try to figure out. I think Virginia is beat Virginia Tech and in, and then I think SMU is beat Cal and in after that Georgia Tech loss to Pitt. So Pitt, with that win over Georgia Tech, is still alive. They need to beat Miami this weekend and for SMU or Virginia to lose. So they need some help. Miami is the highest ranked ACC team in the college football playoff right now, but they need a lot of help to get into the ACC championship game. I'm not sure they're going to get into the playoff without winning the ACC. They need to beat Pitt, Duke, and they need Duke or Virginia to lose. And then Georgia Tech, they need Virginia and SMU to lose to get back into the ACC conference championship game. A lot going on. You better be ready for this weekend. It's probably the most uncomfortable viewing experience of the college football season because either you're somewhere that you're not comfortable with, visiting family or something, or you have multiple people in your home that you are not used to being there, and your family's just looking at you with disgust because they're thinking, can he really just sit there for this long and watch football and basketball? Yes, you can. You need to be ready to just take the staring. Just take the staring from your family members. It's an important weekend. Northwestern, Illinois, 6:30 Saturday night at Memorial Stadium. Night game. First night game in a long time in November at Illinois. Land of Lincoln Trophy on the line between these two. All right, let's look at the Northwestern offense. Let's get into it. Can Illinois bounce back? We know what they want to do. They want to run the football. That is clear. Caleb Komolafe, really good running back for Northwestern. He's hurt a couple of really good defenses this year, and they protect the quarterback pretty well. Don't give up a lot of sacks. Preston Stone, he doesn't throw it much. He can throw it. I wouldn't say he's a bad quarterback by any means. He can certainly manage a game, especially if the running game is going. But he's a pure pocket passer. You don't have to worry about him running. Does not scramble very well. So Northwestern, they're going to try to pound the rock. Illinois gave up a ton of yards to Wisconsin on the ground last week. Can they stop this rushing attack, which is probably a better rushing attack than Wisconsin was? For the Northwestern defense, they're a better overall unit than their offense is. You can get them on the ground a little bit. They're pretty stingy in the secondary, and they take the ball away a decent amount. So it's a good unit for Northwestern. Maybe there's some rush lanes that you can find, but Illinois hasn't found a lot of rush lanes against anyone all year. But they make you work for everything. That's the biggest thing about this Northwestern defense, and that's usually what a Northwestern team is. You have to work to beat them. They don't beat themselves. You have to win the game. They won't lose it. And it's the same thing for Northwestern. They're 6-5. They already have bowl eligibility wrapped up. Boy, would they love to take down Illinois and finish with the same record as Illinois, because if Illinois loses this game, they're 7-5. Northwestern would be 7-5 as well. Illinois advantages, look, none of this matters, anything that I just said, if they don't show up. Because they didn't show up against Wisconsin. Are they going to show up this week? They still have something to play for. I think they know that, but it needs to be clear. They can still win 9 games if they beat Northwestern and they win the bowl game. Nine wins is outstanding for Illinois. It's a great year. They still have something to play for. They need to just get over the Wisconsin loss. Just get over it. You played bad. They played their best game of the year maybe, and they beat you. Okay, well, now you've got a rivalry game against a team that you're better than as well. So go beat them. Are they going to come to play? That's the question. I think Brett Bielema will have this team ready to play. It's senior night. One of the most winningest classes in Illinois football history. They've won a lot of games, especially the last 2 years. here at Illinois. I think Illinois is going to win this game. I'm going to pick them to bounce back. Early spread is a touchdown for Illinois, so I'll pick them to cover that number as well. I believe in Brett Bielema and his ability to get his guys up and ready to play and bounce back after a loss. You know, they've lost now 4 times this year. They haven't lost 2 games in a row. That's important. They still got a shot at 9 wins, guys. 9 wins is great, at least in my opinion. You tell me. You're the Illinois fans. I think 9 wins this year would be a really good year for Illinois. Last game of the season, we will have a show next week. I know they don't have a game coming up for a while. We'll talk about their bowl game a little bit, but we'll do a preview show of that game when we get closer to it, because we don't know who's going to play for either team in that game. But we will have a recap show coming next week. Make sure you tune in. Thanks so much for watching all throughout this season. This is the last week of the year. We've enjoyed it very much. Hope you have too. We'll see you here next week. See ya.